The International Monetary Fund has made its fifth straight cut to its economic outlook for this year. It's warned global growth will fall to its slowest rate since the financial crisis. The IMF says it expects the world economy to grow 3% in 2019, down from 3.6% last year. It blamed trade tensions between the world's largest economies for the global slowdown. The lender also predicted growth to pick up to 3.4% next year.
The global outlook remains precarious with a synchronized slowdown and an uncertain recovery. At 3% growth, there is no room for policy mistakes and an urgent need for policymakers to support growth.
Well, for more on this, Jagruti Dave joins us from Washington. Jagruti, you were at today's IMF meeting. What was the mood like there? Was this downgrade widely expected?
Well, it was a somber mood for a somber announcement from the IMF today. This 3% forecast, as you say, was a significant downgrade, and it is the slowest that the global economy has been since 2008. The words precarious were used in this meeting to talk about the global economy. So, yes, it was very serious stuff, with the IMF issuing warnings and cautions to global figures to make sure that they take the right steps to avert a future downturn. In terms of whether this was expected or not, you look at IMF updates from January, for example, and it did forecast higher growth than this 3% that was announced today. However, they were expecting this to be revised down, so I don't think it was as much of a surprise that today's announcement of 3% was made. And the forecasts in the future, they come with these caveats that if there is an uptick, as you say, in 2020, there are still caveats that could be downgraded further in the future.
We'll get to 2020 in just a moment, but before I ask you about that, I want to look at what the major factors were for this slowdown. Things like trade and geopolitical tensions were highlighted. What more did the IMF say about what impact that's having on the global slowdown?
So I think the key thing that they were talking about were the trade tensions between the US and China. These tit-for-tit tariffs, this war that's been going on since 2018 that has really contributed to the global slowdown in their view. They really urged world leaders to row back on tariffs, to rethink their strategy because of the implications that it has had globally and could have further. The other issue that they raised frequently was the issue of Brexit. The current negotiations underway, whether Britain leaves the European Union with or without a deal. So these are the two key factors that they are talking about that have contributed to the global slowdown. There have been other geopolitical certainties in the Middle East, for example, tensions. And again, this warning, this call that the IMF gave to world leaders to really rein in those tensions.
And a quick one to finish up, looking ahead to 2020. What are we expecting? Is it going to get any better?
Well, look, there's an uptick to 3.4% predicted growth. But this is a modest downturn, modest revised downturn, the IMF said, from previous forecasts. So whilst it does seem positive, they are caveating that, saying that, look, there could be a further downturn. This figure could be revised down. And the US is, interestingly, performing better than any of its G7 partners, but there are slowdowns expected in the US, in China, in Japan. This worry of a spillover from China and its domestic slowdown and the impact of the trade tariffs into the rest of Asia, which then has global repercussions. So all of these are concerns. And in 2020, there's really a sense that developing economies, how they perform and how they recover, we're looking at, say, Iran or Mexico, how they recover is key to how the global forecast is going to be issued. And so the thing that the IMF is saying is that global trade must not be abandoned. It must be improved. And multilateralism is really the solution to a lot of these problems, which seems to be a clear, pointed comment to the US-China trade tensions and the strategies of leaders like President Donald Trump, who has seemed to favour bilateral deals over multilateralism. So lots of sombre reflections for world leaders in the months to come.
Indeed. Jagruti Dave reporting for us from Washington. Thanks for that analysis.